Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to paint in watercolors a single poppy, and we are going to use several colors. We're going to use permanent rose, new gamboge, or if you're using cotton it would be gamboge hue. We're going to also mix those together to make a coral color. Then we're going to use alizarin crimson, and we're going to use hooker's green just for the stem, and then we're going to use the ultramarine blue, and those are the colors we're going to use for this painting. So I'll talk about my brushes a little bit. I'm just going to be using a long pointed round from Rosemary, and I'm going to be using another round brush. These are like a size 6 and a size 4. And I'm going to use a detail brush, and that's about it. Just some basic brushes, nothing special. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my paint going first. So I'm going to start off with the new gamboge, which is the yellow, and I'm going to dip my brush in water and get the paint going into a soupy consistency, the consistency of Campbell's soup. That's why I just say soupy consistency. And I start like that, and then I mix little bits of the pink, which is the permanent rose. I mix little bits into it. I don't combine them equal parts. I just mix the yellow first, get it going, and then keep mixing little bits of the pink into it until I get a nice coral color. And it can be a soupy consistency. I'm not going to do the tip, but I'm going to start up here at the top and I'm going to pull down. So I'm using it. It's not really thick or anything. It's washy. It has water in it, but it's like a perfect consistency to get started. So I'm going to show you different ways to approach these petals. The first way is painting the whole petal first, one color, and then dabbing in a darker color. So now with this pink, I'm going to use the straight pink, the straight permanent rose with less water, and I'm dabbing it into the already wet coral color I made. So it's like a wet on wet. So I have soft edges when you have the transition from the dark to the light. Now I'm going to try a different technique here where I'm going to put the darker color down first. And see, I have hard edges there, right? Where I'm pulling it up and at the edge I see some hard edges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the darker color, clean off my brush, get it more watery, take the coral and pull it down into that darker color. And just to see the difference. And I think what it is that I like the first way better. But it doesn't really matter because I'm going to be going, this is just my underpainting, and I'm going to be going over these petals again. So here what I can do, if I like it lighter on the edges, I can take my paper towel and I could just dab the top of the, I can take color away, so I can dab the top of the petal very, very lightly, don't press too hard, and I can just kind of suck up some of the color. And I still get a soft edge where the darker color goes into the lighter color. Now, why is it darker at the bottom? Well, in my mind, the sun is behind this flower, so the tips are being backlit, and then closer to the center is a little bit more shaded. So that's how I can create this flower and make it look like it has some form. So there you go. So that's not where it's going to end. I'm going to do a second coat over it, but I just wanted to show you how you can go from light to dark, and it kind of shows that the petal is bending a little bit. All right, so now I'm going to do this one in another way. I'm going to start with the light coral color. I'm going to do it over the whole thing. This is like a wash. Remember, I used new gamboge and permanent rose, and I'm just doing a wash over the whole petal. And then I'm going to, let me see what color. I'm going to take some of the darker color, and I'm going to wash it in at the bottom and let it bleed up. This is the wet into wet technique, where you let one color bleed into the other and you don't get a hard edge. Now for the petals on either side, I'm going to start off with using the dark color and putting in some veins in these petals to give them movement. They're not straight lines, they're curved lines. So I'm going to do that on both sides. This is like 2 petals here. There's one on the top and then one sticking out underneath it. So I'm just doing the petals here on the top one, just like that. And now I'm going to go a little bit darker. I take more of the permanent rose with less water and I just kind of put it down at the bottom there, because that petal is kind of curved up. All right, over here I see this petal here. I want this area down here to be darker, and I have this petal and I want down here to be darker. I want to keep the top light, and this one here I have it darker at the top instead of dark at the bottom, and then I have these darker areas here. So I'm going to blow dry this because I think it needs to be blow dried right now, and then I can start with the next step. As you notice, whenever you blow dry it, it gets a little bit lighter. So what I want to do here is I'm going to darken up the shadow areas, the darkest darks of the flower. So I'm going to just use some, like in this area, it's going to be pretty dark right there. So I'm going to use some alizarin crimson, which is a little bit darker than that pink color. And I'm going to just add enough water to make it into that soupy consistency. And I'm going to add maybe a little bit of the new gamboge just to make it a little bit more of a warmer red color, like that poppy color. But because it's still in that soupy consistency and a little bit less water, I can go over this a second coat and it will be darker. I may even go over it again a little bit darker, but right now let's see how it looks. But see, I can make that look like it has a shadow right there in the center. This is just giving each petal some form. It's not looking flat. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other petals. So here it really lightened up, so I'm going to go darker down here. That's what I like to do. I really want my subjects that I paint to have more of a realistic look and really show a turning form. So I'm just going to keep working at it until it does. So I'm going to start going darker here, and then darker also on this side. So some of the veins could be darker, maybe a little bit thinner at the top and longer, and just darken up because it lightened up so much from the blow drying. Now you might ask, why do I do in layers and not just a really thick in the beginning? Because I want it to still have a transparent look, and I don't want it to look flat. So if you do it in layers, it doesn't look as flat. So here I have some hard edges that I want to soften, because I want it to gradually go from the shaded area to the lighter area, not so hard. So I'm just going to dip my brush in water, dab it on a paper towel, and then I'm just going to smooth out some of these edges and blend this color in. Just blend it in, smooth out some of those hard edges. There you go. I might even dab it with a paper towel a little bit, just to kind of lighten up where it's hitting the light a little bit. So yeah, so I'm going to dab it with a paper towel. There you go. And it's just a little bit softer edge. That's how I soften those edges. Now I have one more petal over here to the right that I didn't paint yet, so I'm going to take that coral color, which is permanent rose and new gamboge. I'm just going to paint it over. It's not several layers, it's just the first layer. But you can see when you do one layer how it's so much lighter than multiple layers. So I'm going to do on the left side, I'm going to fill in this whole petal with this one layer of the permanent rose and 2 gamboge, so I'm just going to fill that in. And as I'm doing it, I'm softening the edges a little bit of those veins. I'm just going to fill that in. So I kind of have my whole poppy at least filled in. I mean, you could leave it like that, but my point is to try to make it as realistic as I could get it. And have it look like each petal is kind of growing and moving in its own direction. So after I give it another little blow dry, because I want the whole thing to be dry now, I'm going to do some detail work. I'm just going to do, with a fine detail brush, some veins in these petals. Poppies to me sometimes look like tissue paper. You know, they look like they're made out of tissue paper and they're kind of crinkly. And I want to show that by putting in some of these little veins all around the petal. And these little detail will add to the whole realism aspect of this picture. I'm just going to go around, do a couple lines here, a couple lines there. And when I'm doing these lines, I'm showing the movement of the petals. So they're curved lines, they're not straight lines. So if I want this petal to look like it's curving out or curving down, that's the way I'm going to just pull my brush strokes. Now in looking at my flower, I realize I want to have a little more shadow. So I'm going to use ultramarine blue and mix it in with the red and shade just above the center of the flower. I'm going to do some shading. So I'm going to take the blue mixed in with the coral color, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to just have some strokes coming out from the center of the flower, just to give it a little more depth in there, so it really looks like that petal is curving down towards the center. I'm going to do the same here where it's underneath. I'm going to make it a little bit darker, and I'm just going to go around and do my shading on the flower where I feel like it needs shading in the center. Okay, so just a little bit more down here, and then a little bit more to the left. As you get close to the center, it's going to get darker, so I want to just shade that. I think it will add to the realism of this petal. Now I'm adding a little bit of dark down here where this petal kind of turns down as it's coming towards me. So I want to show that it's bending down. So I'm just making it a little bit darker here. Then a couple of veins on this petal to show how it's coming out from underneath and turning down. So I'm curving my lines down. Now I'm going to mix 3 colors together to make almost a black. I'm mixing the ultramarine blue, the green, and the alizarin crimson. First I'm going to take the hooker's green. I'm going to make it into a soupy consistency, and then I'm going to mix it in with my blue and my coral color that I have. I'm just mixing all the colors together till I get a nice black color, because I'm going to work on the center of the flower. So the first thing I'm going to do is this bulb in the center, which almost looks like it has spikes, almost like a wagon wheel or something. So I'm going to do 2 ovals and then just do these little spikes going out. So lines going out, curved lines all the way around. Yep, and now around that are these little seeds, or the pollen, I guess. So I'm going to be doing that in dark, but I don't want it to look like just a bunch of dots like I did it with a marker. So I might blend it first. Well, I'm doing these dots, but I might blend them a little bit first and then kind of do dots over. I want it to look as realistic as possible. So, I mean, I could leave it like that. I'm trying to decide what to do. I'm thinking I might just blend it all together and not really have any white in that area, just have some gray, and then put the darker on top. So I'm putting like a transparent wash of that dark color over the whole thing. Let's see. And then I'm going to go down here next to the petals in the corners. And I might dab it a little bit and then go over it again with those dots. This way it looks a little bit more natural. Yeah, and they have soft edges too, so it doesn't look like a marker. It doesn't look like it was drawn with a marker. It looks more like it was painted. Yeah, that looks a little bit better, a little bit more natural. I like that. All right, I'm gonna have to blow dry that now, get the center all dry. I see here I want to add a little bit more of the permanent rose, just straight permanent rose, just to kind of soften the transition between the really dark area to the light area. So I'm just going to put a little bit of permanent rose right at the top here. So I have a real soft gradation from the very dark to the very light. Okay. So I like how that looks. I'm using that permanent rose. You know, not everybody paints like this, but it's a way that I do it just to get that realism. You know, I go that little extra step just to get the shading correct. Anyway, now I'm looking at the center, and now that the center of the poppy is totally dry, I'm going to add just some darker dots. I'm going to use that the green, the ultramarine blue, and the red, alizarin crimson. I'm going to mix them all together again to make that black. And it's going to be a soupy consistency, and I'm just going to dab these little black dots. So now I have different shades. I have some gray ones and I have some black ones because of what I did before. So that will just give it some depth and look a little bit more realistic. All right, so I'm going to keep doing that until I finish the whole center. Okay, so once I get that done, now I'm thinking, what else do I have to do? Oh, I want to do the stem, which is the hooker's green. So I'm going to take some of that hooker's green and I'm going to go ahead and paint the stem and the leaf and get that painted a little bit more. Maybe make the leaf a little bit bigger. I don't know. Okay, so I got that done. Yeah, I guess I will make the leaf just a little bit bigger. A little leaf that's underneath sticking out. Okay, so I got that done. After letting it dry, now I'm going to take some ultramarine blue and just do a darker shadow close next to the flower and then also on the right hand side of the stem, just to give it a little bit of a 3D effect. Now you could take off the tape now and just have this be your painting, but I think I am going to go ahead and paint the background. I'm gonna take off the tape now. I think I'm gonna paint the background, the yellow, since I used yellow in one of my other paintings and it looked good. So I'm going to do a yellow background here. And I'm going to first paint the whole background with plain water. Oh, my water's a little dirty, but that's okay because I'm going to be painting over it with yellow anyway. But I'm going to paint the whole background with water first and then add my New Gamboge yellow into it. And why am I doing that? I'm doing that for a couple of reasons, but the main reasons is so that it stays damp, my paper stays damp the whole time, and I don't get any streaks. Because if you're painting right on dry paper and if you don't paint fast enough, some areas might dry before other areas and you might get it streaky. I'd rather have some darker and lighter yellows next to each other, but also have it be very smooth. And the type of paper I'm using is Arches 140 pound cold press paper. So cold press means that it has a little bit of a tooth to it, where hot press would be very smooth. And when I do a large area, I don't want it to be streaky. I want it to blend. So here it's a darker yellow and it's going to go out into a lighter yellow, but see how it goes very gradually. There's no streaks. I can even go over a little bit of the flower at the bottom because it'll just add to the shadow. I really love poppies. I don't know, I just get a happy feeling when I look at them. And this one is going to be one that I'm going to use in another painting. So it's a good practice to do a single poppy like this. And I may just, leave it in my sketchbook, or I might take it out and put it in a little frame. This is only a 6x9 sketchbook, so it's very small. So here I'm just doing the background a little more. It's going to get lighter as you go up. There's some areas that are darker yellow, some areas that are lighter yellow. I like that. It's not a flat color. So what do you think? Are you going to try to do a poppy yourself? All right, so I got to do one last blow dry of the whole thing. And then I'm going to take the tape off. Oh, a little bit bled down there in the left-hand corner, but I didn't push the tape down hard enough. You really have to push the tape down really hard. But this is low-tack tape. It's not regular masking tape. It's low-tack artist tape, so when you pull it off, it doesn't rip your paper. Right there got a little bit of a bleed. I'm probably going to maybe frame it anyway, so it doesn't matter. So here you go. There's my poppy, and thanks for watching.